Okay. Hi, Kendall.
Hi,
Oh
I
yeah.
can hear you.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
know what was wrong. I don't know. I just was like, okay, I'm gonna start fiddling with wires now. And
I, I,
we're
I
good.
think it's the web the GC web they blocking on the like US
Yeah,
and European connection.
that could be. Yeah.
Yeah. We're in Asia now. Okay. Okay. So finally you can we can communicate.
I know. I already feel bad that everybody has to move from the Jitsi to Zoom.
It's okay. It's okay. It's the same with the last couple webinar. The same. We just wait. Everybody is okay with that.
I'm glad it's not just me causing problems then.
Okay. So I think we can start now. It's a little bit late, and we have
Yeah.
like only 40 minutes for the Zoom session.
Okay. Yeah.
And after that, if you have anything else, we can open another session.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. So hi everybody. I would like to introduce you our speaker today, Miss Kendall Nelson from Openstack Foundation. She's gonna walk us through the storyboard and launchpad. The two of the bugs and blueprints management system that most of the Openstack projects are using to keep track of our works and maybe some okay sharing. Um, so let's Kendall
Yeah.
start. Okay.
Awesome. So, yeah, welcome everybody. I hope you're interested in task tracking because that's going to be our topic today. So, as a general background, I run and help run and coordinate an upstream training that we do before every Openstack summit. And we cover all of the basics you guys can see here in this guide that we call the contributor guide. It's at docs.openstack.org/contributors. And it's the like code and documentation one. So we go through all this, we teach people how to set up your accounts, basics of governance and releases, and then we get into task tracking. So we kind of go through that information, and I'll do that today. Usually we have people just read this and do exercises, but I'll go through everything in a little bit more depth. So background on the community and why we have these two task tracking tools. Currently, we're working on migrating from Launchpad, which was the original task tracking tool that we used, or maybe not original, but the most long-standing one that we've used as a community. So Launchpad is like managed by Canonical, and it kind of forces our community to use these Ubuntu One accounts. And we're working on using OpenStack ID as a single auth across all of the applications that we use as a community. So it would be really great if we can finish migrating off Launchpad. There are a lot of other reasons too, but that's the primary one. So we'll go into that a little bit. Storyboard is an open source project actually developed by our community. It exists as a set of repositories under Openstack-Infra. And so they're like, we can take it any direction we want. We have a lot of control over how it looks and how we want to use it. And the team is pretty small, so if you're interested in getting involved there, we would love to have you. I am one of the few developers for it. So yeah, just kind of some basic background. As far as knowing which projects are using one over the other, an easy way to tell is if you go to this github.com, or go find the code basically. So in OpenStack Infra, there is this project config repository, and from there you go into, I'll step back out. So in the Garrett project config, there's a projects.yaml file. This is like a super handy reference if you have not already looked at this file. And in here, you can see the descriptions of all the repositories across all of OpenStack. And if they use Storyboard, they show this use Storyboard tag that shows up around. Just one quick way to go and look and see. If you can't find it already, one place or the other, you can make sure that it is one place or the other based on this. So for Launchpad, it won't say anything. It'll just have like the project description. So that'll only exist in one or the other. Or that'll not exist in Storyboard for sure because it doesn't have the use Storyboard tag. So diving into the tools themselves, since we only have 35 minutes left here. Not every repository has a Launchpad project or Storyboard project. There are a lot that don't, but per team, they decide how they want to track things, if they're using one tool over the other or something else. So if you can't find it, even after going and looking in the projects.yaml file, you might want to just go talk to the team themselves. This is what Launchpad looks like for any project. Obviously, you'd have the same thing for like Nova or Cinder or whatever. That would just be the second part of this URL would be different. So like Cinder here. So yeah, it says like who registered the project forever ago and like all of this other information, tons of stuff here. Basically what we're going to look at today are the really simple parts that you need to know is reporting a bug or a blueprint. For purposes today, I'm going to use this OpenStack Dev Sandbox project that we have created just to like get used to playing with the tools. It doesn't matter what you create in here. It's not going to affect any other project in OpenStack. It's meant to be this playground for you to go and try things out with. As you can tell, we have some more like become a new contributor sorts of things. So you found a bug in the code. There's a problem. Yes, you have to go and log in using Ubuntu 1, like I said before. The first thing it'll do when you go and report a bug, it asks for the summary. It uses the summary to try to find other similar bugs. So if you're just like bug in here, it'll probably come up with like a ton of different things, and it'll be like, oh, is it the same as this one or this one or this one? It's trying to make it so that you aren't duplicating a bunch of things. So I'm gonna do something different. Say, computers are hard. If I can type this morning, because they are. So that's gonna be my bug. And no, I don't think it matches any of these. I need to go report a new bug. So you just add more description here. So permissions in web pages. All right. You can add anything. Generally what the projects are looking for here is like what sort of situation you were in when you ran into the project, any background that you can give them so that they can reproduce the bug themselves and confirm that it's actually an issue in the code and not just something on your individual setup. There's a lot of other information here. You can add attachments, and so this would be like if you have logs, you can go and upload those. A lot of projects will ask for that and not even look at your bug in any more detail if you don't have logs. It's going to default the status to new and the importance to undecided. And these things will change as it goes through the triage process through the by the team that you're reporting the issue to. So you can fill in some of that stuff if you want to. You don't have to. But like I said, depending on the project that you're reporting the issue to, you might need some sort of attachment. I don't have anything for this bug, obviously, so I'm not going to do that. And then you go and just submit your bug report. And so once that gets done, it'll show us what it looks like and how it's associated with this particular project. You can add comments, you can interact with other people's bugs. I definitely encourage going to poke around in this OpenStack Dev Sandbox project and trying to make them yourself before you go and make them on their own in the real world, I guess. So assign to, obviously when somebody starts working on the bug, they'll fill their name in here. Importance and like status, those are probably going to be set by the project team. You can try to set them yourself, but you might not have the permissions depending on the project. Sometimes that ability is only for people that are added to like the core reviewer list, or sometimes only PTLs. Depending on the project, there might also be like a bug czar, so somebody that's responsible for going through and triaging, and so they have those permissions. It depends on the project you're working with, basically. So yeah, bugs are pretty simple. I'm sure you've all reported bugs in one way or another throughout your careers. So the other construct we have here is these blueprints. So blueprints are like feature descriptions. They're a plan for some new thing that you or maybe a customer wants implemented in the code. So we can go and register a blueprint is the way you do this. This form looks a little bit different. It doesn't look for duplicates like bugs. So you can just be like need new headphones or something. I don't know. And then that's just, so the name and title they can be basically the same thing. Title might have a little bit more description. This name is what's going to actually show up in the URL of the blueprint. And you're also going to need it for when you are writing the patch and doing the Garrett integration, so that in the commit message, it like hot links between the two. I'll hopefully get to that a little later after I've gone through both of the tools. So issues, nuance, whatever. Specification URL. This, depending on what project you're working with, again, there are these giant explanations of how the work is going to be implemented, called a specification. These usually exist as RST files in per project repositories. So there's like a Cinder specs and a Nova specs and what have you. So if you have already written one of those, you can add the link here. You can also go and add it after the fact, I think. So there's no worries if you don't have it written and like accepted beforehand. Or if the patch is up, you could link to the patch. That works too. And then obviously summary is another like description. Bad problem. Need ones. Whatever. Obviously should have better summary of the issue than I'm doing now, but for test purposes, this is basically how it's done. You can add an assignee right now, or you can wait until the work actually begins. Drafter is just going to default to whatever your user is. On Launchpad, I'm KJ Nelson. And then approver is also optional. You don't have to add this right away. Generally, you don't add these because you probably don't know who the person is that's going to have to accept the blueprint. Usually these are PTLs, but sometimes they're not. It's a way of like getting somebody involved in the team to sign off on it that, yes, we do want this feature. Definition status, these obviously are going to default to new, which is fine. I would leave it as that also, and just let the project team decide. Same with propose for sprint. I don't have anything selected. depending on what project you're reporting to, there could be a lot of things in this dropdown. It's for organizing work throughout the release. So if you're targeting a certain milestone to get this work done by, you can go and change that. But that's also something that's usually set by the person deciding if it's going to be in that release or not. And then at the end, you go and register your blueprint. Oh no, there's an error. 2 characters. Oh yeah, I just need like a hyphen in here because it's going to end up being a URL. Oh, lost my H. Here we go. Okay. No, we're still wrong. Still wrong. What? Oh, because I didn't get rid of the space that's in there. Ha. Okay. 3rd time's a charm. Hey. Okay. So now we have a blueprint. And you can see that most of this was things that we could have set on the previous screen. This whiteboard is kind of like just a discussion, I guess, of like a comments discussion. You can set up work items as you go through. That's another like editable field. Adding dependencies. So if you have a blueprint that you want to implement, but some other feature needs to be completed before you implement this one, you would add that information there in the add dependency. It might be helpful to subscribe other people on your team, or you can subscribe other like core reviewers to get their attention, but that is going to depend on what project you work on, if that's a thing that they do or not. A lot will be you write the blueprint, you write the specification, and throughout that process, they'll see that you're like asking for these new things. And at that point, they'll probably engage with you. Or if you go into their project channel and ask them, hey, I want to do this thing, can you take a look? That's a good way to go too, rather than assuming, because a lot of projects are really busy with their workloads and have their priorities set a couple months in advance. So if you're trying to target this something this thing that you're working on relatively soon, you probably want to go engage with them rather than waiting for them to see it and contact you. Yeah, so that's Launchpad, the basics there. There's a lot of other things going on up here too. In general, you'll probably just be like reporting things and referencing back to those. The majority of the other stuff is not as widely used, and you probably won't need to know a whole lot about unless you are really, really involved with the project. So if you have specific questions about things, feel free to reach out to me, but that's kind of the basic information you need to know at this point. Yeah, so I'm gonna move on to Storyboard unless we want to stop for questions. If people have questions, I can look at the chat in Zoom, or we can move on, or I can wait a little bit too. We got like 22 minutes at this point. So anybody have questions on Launchpad before we move on to Storyboard?
Hello. Does anyone have questions for Lombard? Question, guys?
Compare blueprints to specs. I can do that. Yeah.
Okay.
So examples. I'm trying to think. Oh, I just wrote a spec actually. Let me see. So somewhere in here. Oh, course. Okay, well, I'll talk while I'm like looking. So we have the specifications are like design documents, so they're going to include a lot more detail about like the plan for how something is going to be implemented. Apparently, I can't type and talk at the same time. Something I learned today. Just go back here. So it's going to include like the other approaches you considered. It's going to include, I don't even know, lots of different things. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so where's the one? Here we go. Beautiful. So so problem description, my proposed change, alternatives, like other things you could do. We do have that like assignee thing that we have in blueprints as well. Basically, the whole reason why this exists separate to blueprints is we wanted a lot more detail than you could show in a blueprint. And the blueprint basically exists so that in terms of task tracking and like issue management and organization of work, we wanted all of those things in a single place, but we wanted all of the description of a like fully fleshed out design specification. So all of the detail exists in a repository that we then also show as like a web page. So like all of these specs have their own pages on like the Openstack site. And we didn't have any really good way of like mirroring them over into Launchpad. So that's why blueprints exist. And not every project uses blueprints for this reason. So they might not use them at all at this point, or it's just a formality thing. Like you just need the name registered there. One of the things that is helpful about blueprints is when you start pushing patches to get the work done and you have the commit messages written correctly with the proper syntax to link the blueprint to the work, there is like a syntax for that. It's like implements blueprint : and then like the whatever, mine would have been like new headphones or something. Basically what it does is it auto posts a link to your patch into the like bottom of the blueprint so that you can see that information there. And then like these specs have a lot of other information too. There's like work items, you actually start listing those out depending on what project you're writing the spec for. Some don't require that. The repositories that you're going to have to create to make this a thing, or yeah, there are lots of different concerns. So infra specifically, obviously they're going to care about like servers. Do you need more servers? Which servers do you need? That sort of thing. There'll probably always be like a testing section in which you describe like what you need to do for tests and that sort of thing. But yeah, specs are definitely what is more common in terms of design details for across all projects. Most projects don't use blueprints as their only source of like information about a new feature anymore. So yeah, any other questions? Nothing. Okay, I can move on to Storyboard now. And if you have anything about Launchpad, we can circle back at the end before we wrap up and stuff. So Storyboard is a very, very different mental model than a lot of people are used to. If you've used like Trello or some sort of Kanban style organization of work, it's much similar to that than this basic like one or the other view. Is it a blueprint or is it a bug? So you have these different like objects that you're working with in your mental model. You have boards, you have work lists, stories, and tasks. Sounds kind of daunting, but I can show you what I mean here. So boards. Let's just go make a board, create a board. Oh, I need to log in. Whoops. So boards are basically just going to be a collection of work lists. So it's a collection of lists or lanes. They mean the same thing, basically. board. So so I'm just gonna make this, I can't type this one. Okay, so you have a title for your board, whatever you want it to be, description, and then you can decide if it's private or not, so if other people can find it while they're searching around, or if they can't. If it's just personal to you, that's fine too. Anybody can make boards. It doesn't matter. There are probably going to be like official boards per project for tracking things, and those are going to be kind of a lot of the projects that are using them are going to not want you to like edit them. They're basically going to be more view only. But some projects are more engaging. They're smaller, so they don't mind if you go and mess around with the board. That's probably something you want to talk about to the project team before you start doing a lot of things. So yeah, you can add a description here. Yeah, I got nothing at this point. But you go and then you add your lanes the same as you would in Trello or some other Kanban sort of thing. So a lot of times it's like a backlog, and then a like doing or like in progress, and then a done board usually. And so we go and we make that. And these you can also do a lot more things with. These are called work lists or also lanes. Sometimes they're referenced as lanes. Don't be confused, they're the same things. So in the context of this board, we have this information. You can go and change these things at any time if you want. Right now, I'm the only owner. I can go and add other owners if other people wanted to mess with this. You can also add users. So users are going to be people that have less permissions than owners, obviously. I think owners can add lanes, change descriptions of lanes, change features of lanes, and all of this like title description stuff. Users, I think, can only edit what is in the lanes. I'd have to double check that. But obviously the permissions are different. Owners are going to have a lot more capabilities than basic users. And so you just add them, you search by name. So say I wanted to add like Thierry, sure, make him a user. Why not? And then you would go ahead and save that. I'm not going to right now, but yeah. So a board is just a collection of work lists, and people can look at it. You can have it private, public, whatever. You can also set due dates. If your project team wanted to have a board that was like per release, you could set a due date for each one of the milestones, or you could set a due date for just the end of the release or what have you. And this would be like another way to organize work. So you could name the due date, be like M1, like for the first milestone, and then set the date. I don't remember what the date was for M1 for this release, but you can set all those, and you can even set a time too, and then save that. And it will be listed up here so that people know and can see that information when they go and look at your board. And if you're setting due dates on cards in the work list, you can also more easily see those, that information. So in one of these lanes or work lists, whichever you want to call them, there is a lot of other information. So right now it's just called backlog. It could be private or public. So searchable or not searchable, we probably want it to be private or public in this case, sorry. And then automatic. So this is an interesting field. So this automatic field basically will auto query for everything in the database that fits some description and puts it into this work list. So there's a lot of stuff you can put in here, and you want to use as much granularity as you can. Otherwise, a lot of stuff is going to just go into your or your work list by default. One thing I should pause on all of this and say, I'm messing around with this storyboard dev environment. Please, if you're gonna go like make boards and work lists and play around with it, please go to storyboard-dev.openstack.org and not just storyboard.openstack.org, because that's the real production database. And we see people make test stuff in there and it just like muddies it up. And in the same way I was messing with the OpenStack Dev Sandbox, it's a place for you to go play around and put those testing, my work list, my board, whatever into, and it won't bother anybody. So please use storyboard-dev.openstack.org and go and make your stuff there. Yeah, so continuing on with the automatic. So you can set criteria for what gets queried for and put into this work list. You have stories and tasks. I'll get more into those constructs a little bit more in a sec. Basically, a story is like a piece of work. It's a bug or a feature, either one. You can, if you've written a lot of like user stories in the past, if you're familiar with like the agile method of organizing work, you've probably written user stories that are like, as a developer, I would like to be able to do X, or as a user, I want to be able to see this thing. And so that's basically a story. But you can go matching or not matching. And then in this field, you can say like, search for a lot of different things. So stories matching a person, it would be like stories that were created by that person or are assigned to that person. You can see people down here. These are individual projects. So if you are looking for stories specifically in this project repository or associated with this project repository, you can filter by that. There are project groups, which are a collection of repositories, and then these are tags that have been created. So it'd be like, I would like all stories that are associated with the Storyboard project group, which has all of the web client, the Python Storyboard client, and Storyboard itself. So yes, I want matching that. And let's say matching some tag, bug, because bug is a very popular tag, and that's how we differentiate bugs from new features. Though in their essence, both things are just a code change. That's something that a lot of people struggle with when using this tool, the concept that both new features and bugs, they don't need to be separate things. Either one of them is a code change, and it could require a ton of work. It could require very minimal work. It could be as easy as setting a like config variable, or it could be something as complicated as, you know, doing a bunch of triaging and testing and then figuring out what broke whatever thing. Anywho, that is an automatic work list. And so it will show up as dark gray. Since you can't like edit it yourself, you can't go add cards, it would have queried for everything and filled it in. I apparently made my criteria too narrow. Oh no, I didn't save my criteria. That's what happened. So important to click save after you go ahead and fill that in, because I didn't do that. There you go. Now it says the criteria you filled in, and we go and save changes, and it will go and query the database for everything that fits that criteria and fill this. I don't actually know if anything exists that fits that criteria right now, so it might not end up populating anything into here, but it will work. It might take a little while because the database is huge. We're working on optimizing those sorts of things and speeding everything up a little bit more. But yeah, trust that it'll work. For the regular manual ones, you can go and just add things. I know I have a like story for a nap in here somewhere, but there are plenty of other entertaining ones too. These are all tasks right now. So if we switch to a story view, you can search a little bit differently. Yeah, I don't know, whatever. You can add all kinds of different things. Just however, you can add a bunch at a single time, or you can add a single one, and then it'll go, when you click add items, those things should show up into the in progress. Oh no, we got a 500. Okay, fine. All right, fine, be that way. Oh man, you can also view just a single work list at a time if you're interested in that. Some projects don't even use a board view. They just have like a single work list that they are looking at everything that's targeted for a specific milestone or whatnot. Yeah. Oh, I want the nap one. You can also go and create a story here. Oh, let's just go do that right now since we have 5 minutes to cover the last part. Okay, I need a nap. Slept 5 hours, not enough. You can mark the private or secure if the bug that you're reporting or new feature request is something that the vulnerability management team needs to be looking at. You would select this and then you need to subscribe those people individually. This is how we're handling private things here, as opposed to the like other formalized VMT process in Launchpad. And if you're interested in that sort of information, I can get you that information after. But yeah, so you go and create the story. You have a title and a description. It will default make a single task with whatever you had as the title description. It'll make that the task. And tasks are what are associated with individual projects, not the overall story, because we noticed that there was an issue in Launchpad that it was hard to see cross-project coordination of larger like features or bugs, something affecting multiple projects. So we do these release goals now for like moving everybody to Python 3 or updating tests, or I think one of the ones lately was like upgrade, checking if you can like upgrade to the next release without any issue. And so those cross-project things we are doing a lot more of now than we used to. And that's why Storyboard is a little bit better, because you can use one of those things, say Python 3, if I could spell, jeez. Python 3 upgrades. And then you would have that for every single project. So obviously Storyboard would need to do this. Yeah, sure. Let's do the Storyboard client. And then it could be the same. Use that here too. And also we want regular Storyboard. Got one. And another one for, oh, there we go. This one would be web client. Yep, and we'll go and save changes. Oh no, unable to convert. I've had this before. I'm showing all kinds of bugs, and it's really, there are things that we actually have like patches for. So Storyboard Dev is not 100% up to date with what exists. Or no, Storyboard Dev is what like up through the patches that we have merged. So obviously we have patches that have not been merged yet in the community, and we have a lot of fixes for these bugs out right now that need to be like reviewed and merged. So stories, we'll like dive into this a little bit, and oh, it's 6:59. Okay. Okay. Yeah, see, it did get created. It just got angry about it. It didn't want to add it to the list. But you can see that it's here. I set it as private. I guess I did set it as private. Oh yes, I did. I totally did. So we can go and we can edit that. We can make it not private anymore. Save that. And then it won't be yelling that at us. But so you can see in this story view, we're looking at story 1795051, all of the information. So I went and I added these 3 tasks, and that'll show up in the timeline in the same way that Launchpad will show links to patches as they get posted. If you add the information in the commit message, it will do the same thing here, and it will populate all of those links as they come in. You can view all the different tasks, and it will sort them by specific repository. Another example of why this is like this and less like how Launchpad was is maybe you have documentation changes, and so those are in a separate repository. And then you have your spec that you need to write, because we were talking about those earlier, and that's a different repository. And so you could have a task like write a spec, and it would be in that repo, and add documentation and that one. And maybe it also requires a change to DevStack for some reason. You could also include that here. And those are all different repositories that exist. And obviously the work that needs to be done is going to be different for each one of those. And so we have a higher level of granularity with that information. Yeah. Trying to think. I think I went through all of the basic information there. Searching is kind of hard here until you get it figured out. Basically, the thing to know is all of these little symbols are really, really handy and helpful. So earlier when I was setting criteria for the work lists, what is happening? Computer, why are you being sassy today? Okay, storyboard. Okay, you can see, oh, I can't spell, but you can see over here on the right that it's like searching. And it might just take a second. It's a large database, and it pulls a lot of really rich information out. So this little symbol here at the bottom, these mean that it's a specific task. These symbols here mean that they're stories. Looks like a book. Like I said before, these are projects. This is a project group, and these are tags. So you can search by like tag, and you can add any number of things. You could go and also add project group if you wanted to. That was a very specific level of granularity there. So, oh man, I'm having problems. And shouting apparently. Oh, jeez. Maybe I need to restart my computer again because I can't type. Wow. Been struggling with other things. Yeah. So you can search by project group or whatever you want to search for. You can search for a person here, and that would add more granularity, and you can add however many of these you want into here. And then it will also split up the information that it comes back with. So stories, it will sort all the stories together, all the tasks together. If there are work lists or boards that fit the description, it would also sort those into here. So if I just looked for like the keyword storyboard, I see a question about milestone or sprint. Those are going to be tags that are associated with a story. So the team would be like Cinder milestone 1, Cinder milestone 2, or whatever. And that's how you would see that information. The other way you could see that information is if they had boards organized, you could go and look at the board. Trying to think. Yeah. Does that make sense? You can ask more than 3 questions if you want. It is early, but I'll do the best that I can. Anybody got questions? Are we running a test version? Well, that's this, the storyboard-dev.openstack.org is like the test version. And that's why I'm putting all this garbage in here. The real version, like I said, is over. It's like storyboard. Oh, geez. Yeah, storyboard.openstack.org is the like real one. And so if we go and look at like, I don't know, stories on the real one, you can see what is happening. Oh, I see that people weren't using the test version. So yeah, next time, if you make more test stories and things, you should go make them in Storyboard Dev, not real Storyboard, because this is how we get this sort of stuff in the database. Yeah, so the milestone or sprints, those are going to exist as tags, like I said. Milestone, maybe? There we go. Yeah, so you have like milestones, Nova milestone, specific ones. So those are going to be tags on the stories and not, they're not a field in a story like they are in Launchpad. And partially that's because we noticed that the milestone field wasn't being used across all projects, and it wasn't something that we wanted to force on them. I think right now it still might be a field in the database, but it's not something that we expose in the web client. So the most common way of doing those is the tags. Any other questions? Nope. Cool. I'm glad a lot of this hopefully makes sense. At any point, if you have questions, please let me know. You can email me if you have questions specifically about how Storyboard works. We have an IRC channel. It's just like the pound or the hash Storyboard. It's not hyphenated with OpenStack before. How easy is it to use in-house with your company? So obviously Storyboard is open source, so you can go and take the code and deploy it yourself. I know a couple of the development team and myself are, or at least a couple of the other developers on Storyboard have clients that use Storyboard. I think they specifically, I don't know who the clients are, but they deploy it at their individual companies, and the other people that work on Storyboard are just like support, I guess. But I have documentation for doing that if you want to. The developer docs, where are we? Yeah, developer docs. Installing and running for developers. So here's our installation guides right here. Karma, so the question was, does Storyboard have something like Karma and Launchpad? We don't currently have anything like that, but that was something that was requested just in, I think it was Dublin, so the beginning of this year. We've added some kind of things. We have like a subscription feature. So that was on this, there's like this star. You can subscribe. We have talked about like exposing the numbers for those, so you could kind of see how relevant it is if people are more interested in that topic, or that sort of thing, to increase the karma for the overall story. But it's not something that we have right now. We have other things prioritized a little bit higher on the list. But if that's something you're interested in, we would welcome patches for it. Other questions? I cannot see. Edit a comment. So yes, in Storyboard, we don't have the ability to edit comments. It's something that exists in the API. So if you deploy Storyboard yourself, you would have that ability. But we decided that we didn't want that in our community, in the community installation, because we don't want people to be able to go back and edit things that they said after the fact. It's just like for keeping consistency, and obviously we all make typos. So if you make a typo, don't feel bad. I obviously made several today, as you could tell while I was typing. So it's a feature we intentionally disabled, going back and being able to edit comments in ours. But if you run it locally, you can do that. Any other questions? How can I delete my storyboard? So you're wondering about how to go and delete it. I don't know that you can delete it, but you can archive it and set it to like, or archiving is for boards. You would go and set the status to invalid. And if you really want to get rid of it, you could go into the storyboard channel and ping us, and we can probably go delete it from the database. It's okay. You don't have to feel bad. We definitely have a lot of other ones that every time we do the training before summits, we end up encountering people that miss the dash dev part and make their test stuff in the real server, so, or in the real database. UAC. What is UAC? User. I don't know what UAC is. User account control. So basically right now we have, you mean like granularity of permissions, or? Okay. Per work list and board, you have that like users and owners sort of thing. Otherwise, like approving stories. Well, you go there. We don't restrict that sort of capability. So anyone can go and make this thing. Whether it's being worked on or not is pretty obvious from if there are tasks, if they're assigned to people, if they are like to-dos, or if they've been marked as invalid. So anyone can mark something as invalid, but it will show in like the description of the timeline who it was and when they marked it as invalid. So everyone can see that information. It's a little bit of an honor system, but also know that if you do that and you don't have that capability, anyone else can go and change it back. We've talked about restricting that sort of permission, but at this point we don't think that it's really necessary, because the people that are most interested in going to edit those things are probably going to be involved with the project. And even if they aren't and go set those things, the people that are involved with the project are going to override that. So it's kind of an honor system at this point, I guess. Long story short. Can you assign a task to multiple people? You can't, but you could create multiple tasks that have slightly different names. You could probably even make a bunch that have the same name and just assign them to different people. Because then, like, depending on what the work is, depending on if the piece of work is large enough that it has multiple people working on it, you're probably going to want to have a more specific task description, or name rather. Or if it's small enough, do you really need multiple people working on it other than to just give them credit? But you can do that more in the commit message than you could here. Having one person accountable is always easier than a like bunch of people. Any other questions?
Okay, I think it's a little bit over time.
Oh yeah, we're definitely over time.
Because,
That's fine.
so I think everyone else, if you have any question, you can ping Kendall on the ESC or email.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you, Kendall, for teaching us today about those tools, and hope you can join us at another webinar or something.
Yeah, would love to.
Yeah, there are lots of cool things that you're working on. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Have a good day, everybody. Rest of your day.
Thank you. Okay, take a nap. Take a nap.
Yes, I'm gonna go take a nap. Definitely.
10 hour. 10
yes.
hour.
Sounds good.
See you.
Yep. Bye.
See you. Bye.
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 Bye. See you.